Hi, Doug.
Hi, Nels. It's so good to see you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Caramoor Conversations. I'm Kathy Schumann, the Artistic Director of Caramoor, and I'm here with Douglas J. Cuomo, who I will now refer to as Doug, and Nels Cline, who I will now refer to as Nels. And we're so excited to have the two of you together virtually in advance of your being together in person in July at Caramoor. For the not the world premiere, but the live premiere of Doug's piece, Seven Limbs. So I want to just start off by asking how this collaboration or this piece really written for you, Nels, came about in the first place.
Doug.
Um, well, I've had an idea for a long time, a desire to write a piece for electric guitar and string quartet, and it's sort of in the back of my mind. And when I began to think about it more seriously, I was making a list, a mental list of what guitarists I might want to work with, and Nels was at the top of the list. So I thought, well, start at the top. So I contacted Nels through his manager. To see if he might be interested, and I was super happy to find out that he was. And so we met. He was interested in the meeting. We met and talked about it, and he was very excited about it, as was I. So we started then to talk about music and all that business there. But it came from this sort of general idea that I had. And
right. So you did not know each other before this?
No, not personally. I knew Nels' work, of course, but not personally.
Yeah.
No.
And let me just ask quickly how the Aizuri Quartet came into the picture.
I was also then thinking about what quartet would work well. And I talked to a bunch of people, actually, including you, Kathy. I don't know if you remember.
I do remember. That's why I asked you. I really just want credit.
Well, you're about to get it. We had a lunch together. And one of the things we were talking about was string quartets for this idea for this piece that I had. And you mentioned the Aizuri as one that I should really look into. So I did. I checked them out online, and they were great. And I went and heard them play a couple of times. And they were even greater. And then the same thing. Then I approached them to see if they would be interested in it, and they were. So I was super happy that my first choice for all the musicians came through, which was for a composer that's so wonderful.
Yeah, and Nels, I'm assuming you did not know the quartet before this collaboration.
I did not. And I actually didn't know Doug's music until I did a little search and discovered Arjuna's Dilemma, which is fairly well represented online, and had a very strong response to not just the actual composing itself, but the content, the theme, the concept of the whole thing, and realized that this guy was a really profound, serious individual. And then it turned out later that we're close to the same age and have a lot of shared influences and early inspirations in life, and that Doug is a guitar player.
Yeah.
Just on not on a guitar geek level, but on a musical level, sharing ideas and talking about what inspires us. And so it just brought me even closer to the project, and certainly closer to Doug and his ideas about music.
Yeah. Very cool. So the subject, or the seven limbs is the Buddhist is a Buddhist practice that I'm not familiar with. So Doug, I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about that and how that is manifested in this piece. And I'm also curious as to whether Buddhism plays into your other works.
Yeah, I will start with the second part first. Yes, so I'm a Buddhist, and I have a pretty serious practice, and meditate every day and think about it as much as I can. And so in some ways it informs, my hope is that it informs everything that I do, music and musically and otherwise. This is the first piece that's really so overtly taken from those sources, but there's other ones coming up that I'm working on or thinking about. And seven limbs is a meditation practice or a prayer, depending on how you look at it, which is basically kind of setting up your mind in meditation so that you have a strong, peaceful mind. And you're getting lots of good vibes from the Buddhas, so that when you meditate, you can sort of go to the kind of places that you want your mind to go to. And it is, in fact, in 7 different parts. Each one is a limb, and it's sort of holding up your practice is the idea. And the piece is also divided into 7 parts, each one corresponding to one of the parts of the 7 limbs. And of course, the 7 limbs prayer has a bunch of words, but the piece has no words. So it's the music is kind of a representation of kind of I'm taking inspiration from kind of states of mind and sort of ideas that come up for me with the different sections. So in some ways, it's a very abstract, representation of the piece. It was almost more like an inspiration for it in a sense.
It is rather meditative, I find, as a piece, the mood of it.
Yes, it certainly has a lot of meditative parts, but it also has some parts that are pretty, Nels, how would you describe some of those other parts?
Well, I think that they refer to, or allude to, I should say, actually conflict. I would even I would say, because there are some pretty strident and sonically overwhelming moments in the piece, which is something that I'm very comfortable with. I'm very comfortable in both worlds, I guess I should say, which is possibly why Doug was thinking about me to do this piece. And also I use a lot of, or a certain amount of electronic manipulation to create what are, kind of, I mean, at least to me, kind of ethereal or even kind of referring to cosmic elements about sound, not specifically even harmonic or note-specific music making. There's large swaths of sound that may not sound like a guitar. And I think that Doug wrote very specifically sections of this piece knowing that I was going to be able to do that, and gave me a lot of latitude, a lot of space to add that to his personal vision of the piece. And so it's a lot of it is very agitated. Well, I wouldn't say a lot of it. A certain amount of it is very agitated, and in so doing creates this contrast where the meditative aspects that you're referring to really have even more power to me musically.
And go ahead, sorry, Doug.
Yeah, I was going to say that I would agree with everything that Nels said, including part of the reason that I was attracted to his playing so much for this particular piece. With he has this, incredibly huge range of playing that's, overtly incredibly beautiful and peaceful and stuff that's also very kind of aggressive and, noisy. And one of the things about Buddhism in general is it takes into account all parts of human nature, right? So it's got everything in there, and you're trying to deal with everything. And so I wanted this piece to have, some sort of representation of not just sort of placid meditating, but of all sorts of other things as well. Yeah.
And there's great beauty there. There's great beauty in all of it.
But Nels, how many different guitars do you use in this piece? And also, was it your choice which sections are sort of acoustic or electronic, or how did that all?
No, well, they weren't my choices. It's worked into the piece that there is an acoustic guitar movement in an open tuning that Doug created, which turned out to be this absolutely enchanting and fascinating tuning that I really love exploring. Everything
I just
else.
have to interrupt for 1 second just to give credit where credit is due here, which is that my son Eli actually showed me that tune.
Oh my Lord!
On this piece, and so I said, "Oh, that's
You
pretty
probably told me this and I didn't remember. So apologies. But ideally, it was to be performed on one electric guitar and one acoustic guitar. But the last movement, the seventh movement, has a high D that's not on my guitar. It's only on some electric guitars, and it's on Doug's electric guitar.
right.
So I have to bring another guitar just to play the last movement to hit without having to bend a half step and have this potentially very sour high D. I bring another guitar just for that, and otherwise it would just be two guitars.
And I think I'm correct in saying that, Doug, most of all of the Aizuri's music is notated, right? Fully notated.
That's correct. Yeah.
And Nels is completely improvised, or what kind of what's going on there?
Nels, go ahead. You can answer that.
No, I was going to say that there are definitely notated moments for me, quite a few, and some parameters set up for harmonic zones, modal areas, a scale, a suggested scale. It's thankfully rather notation free for me because it's not my strength, but it is not completely improvised at all. Actually, it's quite directed, and in fact, even the tone of the guitar was something that Doug and I collaborated on because I wanted very specifically to address the sonic implications of what he had written, and there are quite a number of times where I'm using a much treblier tone than I had initially selected because Doug was looking for a blend with the Aizuri Quartet, and also I would deign to say an expressive timbral choice that fit with what he was looking for. So interestingly, I think if you hear what I'm doing, most people will think that these are all my choices and then they're natural to me. But in reality, we collaborated and discussed pretty much every sonic element of what I played.
But following on from that, would you say that, well, I mean, obviously every live performance is different from any other, but how sort of, what's the range every time you've done this, I think 3 times so far online?
It's been 3 times. I have, it's very similar each time. There are certain areas where I have very, I guess, certain low-key kind of soloistic moments that sound just like an electric guitar. So I'm improvising in those areas, but the mood of them is consistent. And so my goal is to honor that mood and to play something that is quite often in those areas very restrained and that has, I guess, a melodic, compelling melodic aspect. There are other areas where it's kind of vicious. I'm really attacking my guitar, and interestingly, perhaps those areas are also pretty much similar each time because I've come up with strategies to not only create the sounds that Doug's looking for and that he had approved, we could say, but also I have to get my cues. I have to stop at a certain time, and I have to switch to another sound for the next section of each movement, and that takes considerable premeditation, actually, on my part.
Right. I mean, one of the things that was so interesting and enjoyable for me was working with Nels and figuring out, what sound was going to go where, because, as I'm sure many people looking at this probably already know, Nels has a huge amount of different electronic devices and pedals and things that he uses for his sound, and he uses them in lots of different ways. And I was certainly familiar with generally how that works, but to become more familiar with it was a lot of fun for me as a guitarist and as a musician. But a lot of it, there was really a lot of back and forth about this. So I would often start with just a verbal description of sort of what the feel might be that I was going for. And Nels would say, well, I'll give you a couple of different options. How about this or this or this? And then we would, work within that.
And we got together before I even had the music,
Yeah.
because Doug wanted to observe basically right up close what I do and how I do it. And certainly I have, different setups of different sizes, and this is the big setup for this piece.
Yeah, right.
And it was really cool. We got together in Brooklyn and in a little rehearsal space, and we just talked about stuff, and I messed around and
I was
showed him some stuff.
videotaping everything he was doing to sort of go back.
And that's how he ended up finishing my parts, was after that. I'm sure that a lot of aspects of the written material were already in place at that point, but my role, he was leaving, I think, a little bit to the later part of his process after seeing and feeling what my deal is.
Yeah, and certainly, I've written other music for putting improvising musicians in a context that's where they're also playing with other musicians who are playing fully notated and sort of more fully notated classical musicians and improvising musicians from different traditions. And I always try to leave a lot of room for the improviser to do what they do best, and to put them in a place that's a little bit unfamiliar. So they'll do things that they might not normally have thought of doing or have done before, but not something that's so unfamiliar that they're not able to do or don't feel comfortable doing what they normally do. Because of course, the reason I'm attracted to them is because of what they normally do. And also for understanding the potential, at least in my mind, for how that might sit in a different context as well.
Yeah, I think that there's, it's not a vast tradition, but a somewhat long tradition, at least decades long, of this idea of an improviser doing something with, what we might term a classical or notated, more traditional composed music. And I'm very aware of a lot of this because it's always been appealing to me, aesthetically and conceptually. So having listened to, Ornette Coleman's Skies of America, or even like Keith Jarrett's Arbor-Zena, or pieces of this sort, it's in my mind how this can work and how it can potentially not work. But the thing that was ultimately, I guess, encouraging to me, because I get nervous, was that Doug was really wanting it to work for me, and to have my language be part of the piece. And my desire was to realize his dream. I mean, that's kind of what I try to do all the time when I'm playing people's music. But it's not really about some one thing that I do and then you just tack that on and hope for the best. It's collaborative, and I thrive on collaboration.
Yeah, no, we don't have the Aizuri with us today, but I'm sure that if they were here, they would say that for them, it was also probably a really wonderful experience to work with this other form, with improvisation and with even somebody outside of their immediate world. And that's why I suggested them for the project as well.
I won't lie, they were mind-blowing and inspiring to me, but we also had a blast because they're just wonderful people.
Yeah.
And so, and this was the only music that I played with people in the same room since early March of last year. And so for me, the entire experience of meeting them, playing Doug's music, and then being able to be in a space, yes, obviously, like socially distanced with all these protocols in place and wearing masks, it was like I'd come home. It's just this feeling like I was me, after at that point, a fair amount of time not doing what I usually do. And now we're going to actually play for real people in real time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I watched the online premiere and it was wonderful. And I'm glad that you were actually all in the same room performing it live, and not, because I know people have gotten incredibly creative and experimental with doing collaborations, virtual collaborations. So I'm glad you were all together in the same room. You were masked, and And I'm sure that was very surreal. And so I'm so thrilled that you'll be able to see each other's entire faces, and we'll
It's
be
gonna
able
be
to see you
amazing.
on stage.
It was, even with the masks and all the protocols, it was profound to me, and inspiring. They're amazing. They're just
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad that the collaboration has worked out, and I hope that it'll have a long life, this piece. And I know, both artists are very busy, but hopefully this will be an ongoing project that can happen from time to time. So,
I hope so too.
yeah. So I don't know, Doug, is there anything else about the piece that you'd just like people to know before they encounter it live?
No, I don't think so. I think just, as when you go to a concert, you just, listen to it and hopefully enjoy it a lot,
Yeah, no, I'm sure that people will.
And I guess I will say that I'm really proud of this piece and happy with how it turned out. And it was just a joy to be, having Aizuri and Nels playing it. It's just, for a composer to have, I alluded to before, to have these fantastic players playing your music. It's so,
Well, and Nels just said he was there to make your dream come true. I mean,
I know it's
you asked for.
Well,
exactly.
I mean,
and then to do it, it's really.
but I mean, it just, if as long as we're waxing poetic and the prose is purple, I have to say that there are sections of the piece where I don't play, okay, and in the second movement particularly, I have to play during some of the most poignant sections, so I'm concentrating and trying not to mess things up. But there are moments in the piece where I'm not playing, and it was, and I just lost it. I'm hoping not to lose it in front of people, because it's like nobody wants to see a grown man cry. Well, maybe somebody does. I don't want them to. But that's what was happening. That's the feeling that is imbued into this piece. And that's why I also say that the very restive and agitated and even aggressive sections create this contrast, so that these very restrained and sometimes very trance-inducing sections have incredible impact. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, look, I think this summer, any live performances, and we have 35 of them at Caramoor, are going to be special for everyone, because we're all coming out of this period.
Yeah.
So no, we will all forgive you if you cry. There probably will be people crying in the house, and we're all thrilled that.
Yeah,
that
we're so happy to be one of those 35 live performances.
Yeah, so July 9th, I just want to reiterate the date. It's July 9th. In the Venetian Theater at Caramoor, all outdoors. The restrictions are changing every day in New York City, but we are keeping people not on top of each other. It will be all feel very comfortable, I think, for everyone coming to the grounds. So we look forward to seeing you then and to hearing the piece live and in person. So thank you both so much for this talk, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Nels. Good to see you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All the best.